Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Dailies on Network Television, your morning program. Today, the 13th of June 2024. And we keep you up to date with all that is happening from our Nigerian newspaper. So you can do well to follow us through Facebook and YouTube, and then drop your comment and your views. We would love to know what you feel and what your opinions are concerning the stories of interest to you. I am Sada Shadasha, and I'll be doing the program alongside Rachel Tansey. Good morning,
Morning,
Rachel.
Sally.
All right, we shall move straight into the papers, starting with the New Telegraph newspaper.
The big story on New Telegraph 25th Democracy Day. More dividends coming to Nigeria, says Abbas. As Tinubu leads June 12 celebrations, Khan urges leaders to lead with integrity and put people first. Democracy not about winning elections, a statement from OB. APC celebration mockery of democracy, a statement from PDP. We have Anyachu leads patriot activities to Abiola's tomb, lays wreath. There's hunger in the land, June 12 Crusaders. You can find details on page 2, 3, 4, 5, and 26. More Nigerians resort to use motorcycle import. This is a report concerning the hard times. You can start with the details on the front page. Nigeria's oil production falls by 300,000 barrels per day, plunges to 1.251 million barrels per day. A report from OPEC. Details can be found on page 7. Shatima to resident doctors, resist temptation of rendering services in foreign lands. Still on June 12, our loyalty to constitutional democracy absolute, an assurance from CDS. Credible polls potent path to immortalize MKO Abiola, other heroes of democracy. Statement from Adeleke. Details can be found on page 26. Confusion over Nuhu Najomo's headship of NCAA. Confusion over Nuhu Najomo's headship of NCAA. You can find details on page 3. Still on New Telegraph, Nigeria confronts its worst economic crisis in a generation. A report from the New York Times. CSO urged Tinubu to abandon World Bank IMF policies, address Nigerian suffering. Why Benue Assembly repealed life pension bill for ex-governors and deputies. On local government funds, legal firework resume as Supreme Court hears federal government suit against 36 governors today. Case aims at removing LGs from grass abuse by governors. Statement from Fabemi says it is predicated on 27 grounds based on 1999 Constitution. Details can be found on page 2. On minimum wage, Labour says no pact with federal government, insists on 250,000 naira. And there's a study, women who begin menopause early face breast cancer risks. Details can be found on page 6, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
On Leadership newspaper, court rules on Kanu Emirate tussle today. More detail found in the paper. No political will to end banditry, says Zamfara governor, and we remember that even as well yesterday he was worried about the body language of the army and the police. More detail about that can be found on page 7. And on trending, Tinubu condoles with Malawi over the VP's death. And on numbers, Nigeria spent 2.2 billion naira on debt servicing. More detail on page 2. And on June 12, Obi, Anyaku, Owachukwu, and others won a new constitution. Democracy Day, states observe low-key celebrations. And the issue of the alleged sexual harassment, we are having the permanent secretary denies the alleged sexual harassment of a female staff. So more details of that can be found on page 6. 80 die in the Democratic Republic of Congo, boat mishap. You can find that on page 6. Presidency waves off Tinubu's sleep, says he's human. You can find that as well on page 7. And the big story on the paper says on minimum wage, Labour fought Tinubu's speech, insists on the 250,000 naira. Urged the federal government to avoid retrenchment and further economic crisis. More detail of that can be found on page 4. We have a picture story showing us the president during the Democracy Day And then we are also seeing a little coalition of civil society organizations staging the protest during the Democracy Day in Lagos. So you can take a closer look at some of the stories of interest to you from the Leadership newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, Venture Global criticizes Shell, puts NLNG in perspective. You can start with the details on the front page. The big story: full honors for heroes of struggle on Democracy Day. And that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
On First News newspaper, Bishop Kukai saying Nigerian democracy in recession due to lack of cultural reflection. More detail found in the paper. And here we are having a shocking revelation. Banditry now an industry in Zamfara State, says the police commissioner. More detail found in the paper. Democracy Day tragedy, army checkpoint incident claimed 25 lives in Enugu. That's quite a sad story. The permanent secretary denies sexual harassment allegation, cite refusal to comply as motive. Ex-APC National Working Committee member Salihu Lukman resigned, says my membership rendered useless. And the big story on the paper, Atiku extends sympathy, presidency defend. Here we are having Tinubu's Democracy Day fall spark controversy. It could happen to any of us, says Peter Obi, condemned those gloating over the president's fall. So you can look into what more people are saying concerning the sleep that the president had yesterday. And on minimum wage, settle for what won't undermine economy, lead to job loss, federal government begs labor. Anambra monthly revenues won't yield 2,500 naira per resident if shared, coming from Sododo, and I think it's bringing this up as a result of the minimum wage. More detail found in the paper. National Assembly will soon get agreed new minimum wage. Tinubu in Democracy Day speech. We haven't agreed on any wage, Labour is replying, and we still have the picture story showing us the Commander-in-Chief, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, leading the charge at the 2024 Democracy Day celebration parade in Eagle Square. More detail found in the paper, and that's all the First News newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, Nigeria's unity cannot be traded. With your support, I won't fall. You can find details on page 6. Military accused of laxity as bandits abduct 4 in Borno. Democracy Day, lead with integrity, put people first, Khan urges leaders. Opposition kicks as governor, deputy speakers, orders abandon Niger for pilgrimage. Details can be found on page 30. Nigeria requires new constitution urgently, says Anyaku Wachuku Obi and others. Details can be found on page 3. New minimum wage may plunge Nigeria into deeper crisis, Soludo and others warn. Randy lecturers accused of frustrating female student in Ebo University. Details can be found on page 7, and that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
Rachel, I think this is really something that the nation should be worried about, where we're seeing Zamfara is complaining that banditry is already having an industry there. And we're seeing Borno here accusing and militaries accused of laxity as banditry is actually thriving. So are we going to say that it seems as if our military and our police are not doing anything again? Are we going to say that will it be okay to say that they are tired? Would it be okay to say they are no longer working? Because this is what the governors from Zamfara and Brunei, we know that these are one of these two states have really have their share when it comes to the issue of kidnapping, Boko Haram, banditry, even the clash between farmers headers. We will say that this state have actually have their fair share. So what is the way forward now? Because this is not just today. We've seen it. I think from yesterday we've seen it on the paper where the governors are complaining laxity coming from our military as well as our police when it comes to fighting and facing banditry headlock.
It means something is wrong somewhere. I believe that the military are in need of support from the government for them to function very well. And when you see them not functioning, it can be two things. Either way, it means something is wrong somewhere. It's either our security forces are not having the support that they need to be able to combat insecurity, or they are refusing to combat insecurity. However, they can't refuse to combat insecurity. So I believe that the latter is most likely the case, where they are not getting enough support that they need, the resources to be able to combat insecurity. Because when it comes to our security forces, be it the military or the police, that is what you have signed up for. Except if you want to agree to be incompetent, and then I don't think that's a code of conduct for the military. Precisely, they cannot afford to not be competent. So I want to believe that we are just faced with a situation that, first of all, is either they are outnumbered. We are seeing that there's a need for recruitment. We saw recently where the police force recruited 10,000 people. We are waiting for their training and probably them becoming part of the system. And let's see if the numbers will increase. But for a population of 200 million above, and we are looking at almost 300 million, I think our security forces are really lagging behind when it comes to the number. We need more. And then secondly, again, when it comes to the military, I believe fighting banditry, I keep saying changing the narrative also go a long way. Who are these bandits? Where are they coming from? What are they standing for? Because if it is just banditry, it still looks like a civil situation where it could just be for the police to handle and something like that. But how are we tagging these bandits? What are we calling them to make it really easier for the military to step in, sweep in, and then take control of the situation? Either way, when a state government is crying, I believe they're telling the federal government that, you know what, this is beyond us and we need our help. And if the federal government is not doing something about it, then that's why I keep saying it's more about, if we are to put a blame, I think the percentage will go on the fact that I believe that our security forces are not getting the support they need, be it manpower, be it weapons, their ammunition, be it all the resources that they need to fight crimes where it's needed and important. Because whether we like it or not, I keep saying one thing that cannot be overfunded is security. There's no such thing as overfunding security, because we are still nowhere when it comes to the things we need to be able to counter terrorism, to be able to fight banditry, herdsmen, and just to give birth to a secured environment. So let the federal government step in and help these state governors, because they are not keeping quiet. They're clearly saying this is above us. Someone somewhere is sleeping on their job, and then we need quick intervention.
Richard, I will not agree less with you, because totally that is the situation. I also feel the same way. And you know, we've been talking about even the welfare of these security agents. They have not been, somehow when you look at it, it looks as if they do not get the training. They do not get the backing, just like you said, coming from the state governors as well as even from the federal government. So if we are having Zamfara governor complaining, we are having Borno governor complaining, we are also seeing the issue of even what happened in Enugu at the army checkpoint. We saw what happened, I think, during the IPOP day as well. A lot of things need to be done. Just like you said, I think the numbers also, the government need to do something about it. I know just recently the army and the police had their own recruitment and all of that, but we still need more hands, because looking at them, even though I know, Richard, I can boldly say that put together all this Boko Haram, just like you said, when you say banditry, it looks more civilian, but I believe this is more than civil case. This is more on a higher level, talking about terrorism, terrorizing people. Put them all together, Richard. They're not even up to 500,000.
I doubt it.
Put them all together. But I just think that our army are not really getting the right training to be able to target these people where they are. Because we saw, they have really have a lot of success just this year alone. So I hope that we'll see more support coming from the governors, how they need to also boost their morale. We need to tell them they're doing their best. This just makes them look as if they've not been doing anything. I know how many of them we've lost as a result of all of this not support coming to them. So let's look forward to seeing more support coming to them as well. And I think that's all, Richard, on the Guardian, right? All right, let's take a look at Daily Independent newspaper. Only new constitution will stop Nigeria from collapse, coming from Anyuku. And then we have court dealing declared pro-Wike lawmakers, PDP members, coming from the Rivers Attorney General. And a new minimum wage, which is a big story for the paper. Federal government asks Labour to settle for what won't lead to mass retrenchment. NLC faults Tinubu speech, saying no agreement with federal government yet. Recount how they were intimidated, harassed by government officials. Says their demand remains at 250,000 naira. More detail can be found on page 29. Still on Democracy Day, APC assured Nigerians of better days ahead. APC can win the next election except through rigging, coming from party chieftain. Says Nigerians believe Tinubu is one-term president. More detail can be found on page 7. Governance grounded in Niger as governor and 70% of the cabinet depart for Hajj. You can find more detail of that on page 6, and I think this is worth discussing, so we'll discuss it later on the show. Governor Imba breaks 19-year jerks as NMCNO case internship indexing for the Enugu State University Technology over School of Nursing. More detail can be found on page 6. Some governors encouraging youths to be criminals to rig election, coming from Jonathan. The outside of the paper, lead with integrity, put people first, can urges leaders. More detail on page 7. And that's all on Daily Independent newspaper.
The big story on Daily Sun newspaper: controversy over Tinubu's fall at June 12 parade. Sleeping shouldn't distract from import of Democracy Day celebration. A statement coming from the presidency. I hope all is well with him. A statement from Atiku. Don't gloat over incident. A statement from OB. Details can be found on page 6. Activists protest in Lagos, Benin over hardship. Charge government to address hunger, inflation, and insecurity. On minimum wage, no agreement with federal government, says Labour, demonstrates at Eagle Square. Boko Haram kills 3 fortifying warning, sacks villages, raises houses in Niger. Gani Adams Udumakin orders Sikh regionalism. And we have Ohaneze decries non-recognition of Humphrey Nwosu. Details can be found on page 27 and 28. Soldiers kill 3 terrorists in Zamfara, recover weapons and stolen ship. Sexual harassment and battle palm secretary fights back, denies allegation. Nigeria has deteriorated into state capture. A statement from Peter Obi. Nigeria's oil production slumps to 1.25 million barrels. You can find details on page 2. And that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
On Daily News Herb newspaper, on minimum wage, our demand remains at 250,000 naira. No agreement yet. Labour counters Tinubu. Accuses president of misinforming Nigerians. More detail in the paper. Democracy Day, Peter Obi, Atiku differ on Tinubu's Eagle Square sleep. I hope all is well with you, Atiku mocks. We achieve nothing by gloating. Could happen to any of us, says Peter Obi. It's a mere misstep, coming from the presidential aide. Don't make a meal of Tinubu's slum, Osibanjo ex-spokesman caution. More detail found in the paper. And still on Democracy Day, Pirates Confraternity charges National Assembly and federal government on continuous electoral reform and electronic voting. You can find more detail of that in the paper. Some governors using criminals to rig election, Jonathan alleges. I have no regret stepping on powerful toes, says Benue governor. Outrage in Niger as governor, deputy speaker, state exco and members travel to Saudi for Hajj. Hard times, no more excuses, Bodejo tells Tinubu. Ex-Vice Chairman Lukman fully dumps APC. Why my subordinate accused me of sexual harassment, coming from the Foreign Affairs Ministry Permanent Secretary. You can find more detail of that in the paper. And on Democracy Day, be wary of anti-democratic forces, Tinubu warns Nigerians. Praise Abiodun and other June 12 heroes vows to preserve democracy, appeases citizens over the harsh economic situation. Downside of the paper, settle for realistic minimum wage, federal government advises labor. More detail found in the paper, and that's all on Daily News Hub newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, Abiodun commutes death sentences for 45 inmates and pardons 41 others. CIBN dispels fears, assures public of banking system stability. On Democracy Day speech, no going back on 250,000 naira minimum wage demand, Labour tells the president. Globalcom commits to Ojude Oba 2024. The big story, June 12, protesters defy heavy security presence, unite in Lagos, Osun Ibadan against economic hardship and others, says legacy of MKO Abiola unfulfilled 31 years after, as police arrest 5 Revolution Now protesters in Ibadan. We have picture stories showing the demonstration. You can find details on page 13, and that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
On the Vanguard newspaper, Nigeria's crude oil production drops to 1.25 million barrels per day in May, a report coming from OPEC. Lukman says APC can no longer win election without rigging. You can find that on page 9. Coming from NDDC, why 1 trillion naira is needed to fund legacy project. Why 1 trillion naira is needed to fund legacy projects. Labour rejects Tinubu's claim of minimum wage agreements. You can find that on page 8. Why I support full local government autonomy, coming from Governor Abdul Razak. You can find that in the paper. Ego Square sleep, Tinubu not Superman, coming from the presidency. And on Democracy Day, eminent citizens, elder statesmen chart way forward as protests hit Abuja, Lagos, Osun, and Kaduna. We need new constitution to halt Nigerians' collapse. And also we have our democracy have suffered state capture, coming from Obi, Sanwo-Olu, Ayade, and others exhort MKO Abiola. Address Nigerian suffering, Khan tells the federal government. Our democracy in recession doesn't reflect our cultural experience, coming from Bishop Kuka. Gani Adams, OK, Odumake, and others canvass regionalism. You can find that in the paper. We have a picture story here on Do Commission's new secretariat, where we can see the former vice president, the former president actually there during that, and then we have the governor of the state as well. We have a column for Olufasan that he said the anthem did not stop the civil war, and the idea that millions of jobless and oppressed youths will be more committed to the ideas of nationhood simply because of the empty words of an anthem is hair-brained. You can find more detail of what he has to say about that on page 16, and that's all on the Vanguard newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, CIBN says Nigerian banks safe amid liquidation fears. Appointment ex-Super Eagles defender Soje calls for Finidi's sack. Details can be found on page 16. Tinubu shrugs off fall at Eagle Square, says I'm only prostrated for democracy. I love this humor from the president. Atiku Obi also sympathized with president. You can find details on page 3. Defense chief calls for Simon Ekpa's arrest. Prosecution accuses Finland of shielding him. Zamfara governor decries lack of political in fight against insecurity in Nigeria. You can find details of his statement on page 3. The big story, new minimum wage, again Labour talks tough. Insists on 250,000 naira, says no agreement with federal government yet. Says Tinubu may have been misled into believing there's agreement with Labour. Federal government says no to wage that will undermine economy and leads to job losses. Details can be found on page 2. Ex-APC NWC member Lukman finally resigns from ruling party. On economic hardships, Soludo canvasses support for Tinubu's government. Impact of Tinubu's economic reforms will be felt soon, Edun is assuring Nigerians. And we have And we have pageantry journey of Harriet Edide. You can find details on page 14. A picture, Democracy Day 2024, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu celebrating 25 years of uninterrupted democracy at the Eagle Square, Abuja. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
All right. Well, before we move forward, I'd love us to take a break at this moment. We just want you to just take this time to chew the stories. I mean, we're seeing various angles regarding the president's sleep yesterday, and as well the humor coming from him saying he's frustrating for the nation. We have other story where we are seeing that even our oil has dropped to about 1.2 million barrels per day. So this is really worrisome. What can we do about that? Your recommendation are welcome, so you can drop that on our Facebook and YouTube. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back after this time out.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zoom on Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories on the paper, various comment coming regarding the president's speech, where we're saying that even the Labour is not happy. They said that the president is misinforming Nigerians because they have not yet come to an agreement. We're saying that governors are complaining the fact that they might not be able to afford this. So quite a number of reactions. We're seeing that even yesterday there were protests in some parts of the country, Lagos, Kaduna, Osun. And then we just want you to drop your comment and your views regarding any of the story that is of interest to you. I still have Rachel with me in the studio. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, sir.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper, I guess, and that will be The Voice of Liberty. And The Voice of Liberty here says Nigerians advertising industry valued at 605.2 billion naira, coming from PwC. More detail in the paper. Kano Emirate tussle. High Court hears suit stopping Bayero and 4 others June 24th. And on Democracy Day, Nigerians protest over hunger and economic hardship. Still on June 12th, poverty, insecurity, hunger threaten democracy, good governance and rule of law, coming from the chairman RKRG Ramalan. You can find that in the paper, where we have the chairman Renew Kaduna Restoration Group Alhaji Ahmed has warned that Nigerians' democracy is under a threat from widespread poverty, corruption, hunger, insecurity, and disillusionment among Nigerians. You can find that in the paper. I hope all is well. Atiku sympathized with Tinubu after falling during Democracy Day celebration. Again, Abuja Kaduna train derails the 3rd time in 2 weeks. And also here we have Nigerian may lose $27.2 billion investment to other countries, coming from a promoter. And on June 12th address, we have I risk my life for democracy, Tinubu, no agreement on new minimum wage yet, coming from the NLC. More detail can be found in the paper, and that's all on the Voice of Liberty newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, the big story, June 12, Nigeria needs new constitution, and Yelku Nwachukwu and others are saying. Ex-Commonwealth Secretary General leads other patriots to Abiola's tomb, lays read. Fashehun family protests Tinubu's omission of OPC founder in list of heroes. Details can be found on page 2. Restructuring, Nwodo Wabara lead 20-man Ohanaeze committee to articulate Igbo position. 2024 Hajj, over 1.5 million foreign pilgrims arrived Saudi Arabia, warned of severe temperature. Our democracy declining because it's not from cultural experiences. Statement from Kuka. You can find details on page 2. Ex-NWC member resigns from APC, says Tinubu's policies are anti-people. Police arrest 31-year-old man with 8 human skulls in Ondo. World Bank Trade Ministry partner NSC to tackle multiple inspection border ports. Details can be found on page 6. NLC to Tinubu, no agreement reached on minimum wage yet. Our demand remains 250,000 naira. We won't accept any starvation wage, it insists. Don't demand what will undermine the economy, federal government tells Labour. You can find details on page 29, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Punch newspaper, governors demand refund from $10 billion NIPP investments. Detail found on page 19. Federal government threatening to punish schools shunning safety guidelines. You can find that as well on page 7. Hashtag End Hunger protesters seek end to economic hardship. And we're having here the World Bank. Federal government begins talk on 90,000 kilometer fiber optic cable project. More detail of that can be found on page 19. And on minimum wage, federal government warn of mass sacking as Labour disown agreement. Unrealistic minimum wage will cause job losses, minister tells Labour. And in as much as I don't want us to talk about it now, but we just cannot escape to talk about it, Rachel. Already we are having governors, precisely we are having Soludo saying that, in fact, his state cannot generate, that the revenue, if you divide it, is not even up to 2,500 naira. And then here we are having, I remember it was last week we saw how much governors are spending on entertainment, as well as when you go through some of the breakdown of what our ministers, our senators, and even our governors are earning. You will believe that, you know what, it seems Nigeria has lots of money to spare. But when it comes to the people who lay their life, 35 years of service, 60 years or 65 years of retirement, I mean, these are people who need to be well taken care of because they're doing all that they can to keep the economy moving. And these are the same people that the government is saying we do not have enough money to fund you. And I asked a question, and I know this is the same question that Nigerians out there are asking. What will happen when we have these leaders? If really you have come to serve the people, what is wrong in cutting down your allowances? We've seen governors, we've seen presidents of state cutting down certain things. And that is where we saw even Aisha too coming out to say, you know what, let's even scrap Senate, because to her, she doesn't see the need of having the Senate, because it seems as if that they are not really functioning. That should be what she believes in. So what is wrong when we have our leaders saying, you know what, if I am earning, for example, 5 million naira, what is wrong when I cut 3 million naira to go into my state? After all, I have a lot of other allowances apart from my salary. What is wrong with that? But here we are having our leaders, rather than looking for a solution, you are looking at how you can make sure that labor bend. I mean, we're talking about from 615,000 naira, cutting down more than half to 250,000 naira. And here we're having our minister saying, please consider, please consider. And yet these are ministers that some of them from the very first day that they were sworn into their office, we've not heard anything. In fact, right now, if you ask the common Nigeria how many ministries we have, they only know few, because those are the few that have been talking and have been working. The rest are just quiet. So right now, what really is the problem? Is it that the country cannot actually afford to pay 250,000 naira? Our governors had less that they do not want to consider this. What really is the problem here that we're having our leaders, our ministers, federal government come out to say, it seems we cannot afford this, and we, as it is presently, it's in the hands of our lawmakers. So if we are having this body language, I can only imagine how much they will actually pass as a bill to be the new minimum wage.
This only tells you the mindset of our governors, that they're just sitting down and waiting for FAAC allocation. Because when you talk about the revenue of your state and when you share it to a household, they'll barely get 2,500. My question is, what are you doing about revenue generation in your state? We are so dependent, because when state governors are saying we cannot pay, they are not looking at internally. They are looking at what will be the allocation to us. And as long as your mindset is of your allocation, you will not grow, and you'll never even be able to pay 30,000 naira minimum wage, because as it is now, the suit at the Supreme Court against state governors is why haven't they paid the 30,000 minimum wage so far. And I know that there are states that might not be generating more and could be considered poor, but 30,000 naira shouldn't be a problem for years, ever since it has been minimum wage. It shows that the state haven't grown, and if you haven't grown, it means they've been having incompetent leaders for a very long period of time. Because what are you doing about generating revenue in your state? The good thing is that there's no one state in Nigeria that don't have a solid mineral, that don't have a unique resource, that don't have the capacity of generating more than what they are making now, rather than waiting on the federal government's allocation or waiting on the State Board of Internal Revenue to generate taxes and all of that. And we know that some states, when it comes to business, they are not massive like other states. And of course, tax revenue generation will not be as much as for other states, depending on your size, because we have other states that are very small. But what are you doing peculiar to the resources and the materials that are available in your state? For years and years and years, we haven't seen state government do much about it. What is that crop that is what is that? Yes, what is that? Be it cash crop. Every crop is a cash crop as far as I'm concerned. Some is industrial, while the other is just a cash crop for direct consumption. But every crop is cash crop because you can sell it, so you can make money at the end of the day. What is that crop that you can grow? Why is the government not stepping into agriculture and boosting certain product in a state to be able to generate revenue from that alone? We can give example with many states. How many interventions have been given for a particular thing to say, okay, you know what, if our capacity a year is 500 million bags of that certain grain, if the government step in and says, okay, we are upping it to 1 billion, so that our reach, our distribution, our export out of the state will increase, and all of that. I keep saying it, if they are doing it, we'll see it on the news, we'll see it on the paper, because government don't keep quiet when they do certain things. The government always want to show people they are doing something. What are you doing about generating revenue within your state for you to be able to afford certain amount of minimum wage? Even when the government comes and say this is the minimum wage, you look at your citizens. That's where state laws comes in, Sele. I keep mentioning that you look and see, okay, based on what we can give in our state, this is what we can afford. And let the difference not be much from the federal government, and tell them, okay, you know what, in so time we are working towards getting, and then be a man of your word, be leaders of your word, and then eventually come and give these people their minimum wage. I think we will see growth in that way, rather than just telling people that you cannot afford it. I say, what miles are you taking to make sure that your people that you are governing get what they deserve?
You know, hearing certain speech from our governors just insinuate that they are not making an attempt to actually stretch and do something. Just like you said, they are depending on the federal allocation that is coming in. And so you're not looking at what you can do. In Plateau State, you can say you don't have nothing. You have so many vegetables. How about the team? We have illegal miners everywhere making money. Why not the government should get involved in that and see how you can turn that revenue? There's so many ways. I mean, we see when Plateau State, we say keeping the environment clean. I would say maybe if I was given a particular appointment, for every letter you drop, you pay 500 naira. You are generating revenue and you make strict law that you must adhere to. You say that the environment will be extremely clean because everybody is afraid of paying a certain fine. It might look very little, but little by little, that is how you get things. So I'm hoping that, governors need to think outside the box. What can we do to make sure? I mean, let's not say that, just like you said, yes, we know there are particular states that are more, but I mean, you can do something. So I just hope that these flimsy excuses coming from our governors, the federal government should not take it, as well as our federal government. They should also think. Cut down, that's my own suggestion and recommendation, Richard. They should cut down their allowances so that it will go around. After all, it's a national cake, it's for everybody. So let's just keep our fingers about that. Now, still on the Punch newspaper, we have on the sexual harassment. HOS suspend the permanent sec, others probe into the issue. More detail found on page 42. Ondo man nabbed with 8 scores human parts. Detail found on page 5. Motorists grown as Ogunra Market cause Greek lock on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. You can find that on page 4 and 5. Why? It seems some people have money to afford the RAM for the Salah. So you can find more detail of that in the paper. We have a picture story, the president during the parade marking the 25th anniversary of Democracy Day in Abuja on Wednesday. And that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On the Daily Times newspaper, Nigerian banking system is stable, CIBN assures Nigerians. On Democracy Day, why the nation's economy is ailing, coming from stakeholders. 9 Bauchi local government rigs moderate, high flood this year. A report from NEMA. Details can be found on page 5. Still on Democracy Day, Ayoku orders reiterate call for new constitution. The big story, no agreement with federal government on new minimum wage, says NLC. False Tinubu's Democracy Day claim, insists on 250,000 naira. Says Nigerian workers won't accept any minimum wage figure that approximates to starvation wage. Tinubu vows to preserve democracy, protect citizens' freedom. You can start with the details on the front page. CDS retains armed forces unalloyed loyalty to Constitution and Tinubu. You can find details on page 2, and that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
And Business Day newspaper, no way through. We have Shigeni visa rejection hit 4-year high. Nigerians visa denial cost rise to 3.4 million euros. You can find that in the paper. Rejection seen worsening in 2024. More detail of that can be found on page 31. Nigeria's crew cargoes face stiff competition from cheaper rivals. France now the biggest buyer. You can find more detail of that. We have shut down Shake as once daring tech industry. Shut down Shake up once daring tech industry. You can find that inside the paper. And we have record losses sink manufacturer stacks to 3-year low. Volatile Naira renew pension fund push for offshore investment. You can find that as well on page 30. We have a picture story here in the front page of the paper. This is about the management at Yelugwa Bayelsa State. You can draw out to get the paper and see what the meeting and the deliberation was all about. And that's all on the Business Day newspaper.
On Sport Extra, the new number 10, Fisayo Dele Bashiru joins the select club of players to wear the Eagles special number. You can find details on page 7. Adara Bioyo considering Eagles switch. Roma to pay 35 million euros for Omoro Dion. Owoniyi tops the Portuguese striker list. And on Olympics, Falcons don't fear group of dead. A statement from Inadozi. You can find details on page 6. CR7 playing Euro at 39, a gift. Gets late German call up and then sell him. Blue fans want Sterling out. Lewis snubs Arsenal, you can find details on page 5. Mourinho plotting Adebayo Fenerbahce move. And for NPFL, Heartland go down, Nasarawa El Kanami promoted. I want to fight Joshua, says Mike Tyson. Australia's Tate Moss set 200-meter freestyle world record. This is for swimming. You can find details on page 2, and that's all the news on Point Sport Extra.
Well, that's how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you, Rachel, for joining us.
You're welcome,
And also thank you to our viewers. Thank you to our supporters. Thank you also to the production team. Until we come your way again tomorrow, please do have a great day ahead. Bye for now.